Yeah, so we've got 3 people presenting now. Mags has worked for Natural England for 15 years, specialising in wetland restoration of designated sites, and is the senior specialist for vascular plants. She's also the chair of the Shropshire Botanical Society. Becky is a senior analyst at Natural England with a background in ecology and a love of the natural environment, and has worked both in the UK and overseas. And then we have Karen Kramer-Wilson, is the principal advisor data strategy, working on the Natural Capital and Ecosystem Assessment pilot, which I'm sure we're going to hear lots about now. So I'll hand over to you, Karen.
That's great, thank you. Yes, I'll get to briefly touch on it today, but I just want to say we're really happy to be here today and pleased to have the chance to highlight just a couple of the examples of the way your data impacts our work in a very real way. I'll introduce very briefly the new program that you just mentioned, the NCEA, and that's taking place across DEFRA, and we'll share with you what that means for us in Natural England. Just to say, I personally started my career as an agronomist and an entomologist, and I spent time working with some rare plants in the end at some high elevation sites in North America, and eventually moved across the pond here, as you can tell from my accent. And I worked in the Brecks, the Broads, and the North Norfolk coast, but have now joined the national team within Natural England. Next slide, Becky. Great. So the NCEA, in brief, in very brief here, is an ambitious cross-DEFRA program to assess the state of biodiversity, ecosystems, and assets. And it hosts a wide range of projects that aim to improve not just the products that are produced, but the approaches to doing so. So Joe, Jay, and Mark, thank you. You all mentioned robust data as key to having good evidence, critical to understanding the changes in phenology, hotspot mapping, key site identification, functionality, and really having interoperable action plans and informed proposals, all great examples. So my personal focus within the NCEA is on data mobilization and management, and that's done in collaboration with citizen science projects and in support of our field data collection and ambitious mapping and tool development work that you're going to hear a little bit more about from Becky in a moment. Next slide. So we had some really ambitious, broad outcomes and benefits in mind when we crafted the proposal for data mobilization. And it's really not just about freeing historic data, but really taking a forward look in collaboration with folks like yourselves, which we are actively doing, at significant areas of data bottlenecks and the opportunities we could tackle together. So it's still really early days, but we can't emphasize enough how vital good evidence will be to address this increasingly rapidly changing environment and how we need to quickly adapt our approaches. Next slide. So in order to help us articulate this, in data mobilization, we've adopted this data flow pathway model. You'll see it other places, but we just felt this is really useful to enable us to work together with people like yourselves to focus on key areas that will support essential data being used as effectively as possible. So it's a really broad overview of how we understand data to move into and through systems. And when that flow pathway is functional, then an effective data journey is possible. And I'm going to hand over to Becky and Megs to really share some of the journeys that your BSBA data is part of today. So I'll hand over to Becky.
Thanks, Karen. So hi, everyone. My name is Becky Trippier, and I'm a senior advisor leading on our NCEA's Trees and Woodland Planting project, which is helping to build the evidence base to inform tree planting activities. So as mentioned by Jay, in May this year, the government set out its long-term plan for trees, woodlands and forests under the England Trees Action Plan. So this recognises the role which trees have in helping to meet net zero targets and in curbing biodiversity loss. So under this, they've committed 500 million to Nature for Climate Fund towards trees and woodlands in England, and it includes commitments to plant 30,000 hectares per year, which is thought to equate to around 90 to 120 million trees a year. So a strong evidence base is really key to support this plan. And so our work under the NCEA is looking to help develop new spatial data sets and products, as well as updating key existing data sets, such as the ancient woodland inventory, to help inform these tree planting sites and better manage our wooded habitats. So it's really critical, as in the last few years, there's been a few high-profile cases of inappropriate tree planting. So, for example, in areas of Cumbria, such as Barrier End, where trees were planted on species-rich deep peat sites, and in Gateshaw Mill, where trees were planted over a species-rich limestone grassland. So this risks further damage to the environment, and so better evidence is really essential for informing these land management decisions. So BSBI initially collaborated with Natural England and the Woodland Trust to use the millions of records collected by yourselves to map counts of indicator species. So these are species which represent areas of high quality habitat and priority value. These heat maps show where these high botanical hotspots are located and can help us to plug gaps in our existing inventories to screen proposed tree planting sites. Under this NCA project, we're working with BSBI to further develop these maps for operational use and mobilize this data as a toolkit for tree screening. So this will involve producing clear guidance on how these maps can be used and deriving spatial data products to interpret this into a traffic light approach for informing users of where we have these areas of high botanical value where no planting should be taking place, or areas where further survey may be required. So this will be through first a check of the presence of priority species, these being those which are rare, scarce or threatened in the UK, and then looking at a coarser scale at a wider suite of indicator species, which are derived from BSBI's Axiophyte list and from common standards monitoring for the different broad habitat types. So with help from our habitat specialists at Natural England, we will be establishing thresholds to determine those high quality sites based on the number of indicators present and looking to take into account survey effort as well as regional variations in species presence as well. So overall, this work will aim to mobilise the citizen science data for use within Natural England and those working within the conservation sector across the DEFRA family, putting your data in the hands of people making those key land management decisions. So this will involve working closely with our data mobilisation team and developing clear licensing and guidance around the data usage. As well as this, we're also creating a heat map specifically for the ancient woodland indicators to support the update of this inventory, which is also taking place under the NCA. So these data products are going to be not only beneficial for tree planting, but can also feed into a lot of other key policy areas as well. So for instance, for validating existing data sets, as we've mentioned with the ancient woodland inventory, but also that priority habitats inventory. And they can also have applications in informing agri-environment schemes, work under the local nature recovery schemes, as well as informing opportunity mapping and habitat assessments as well. So now I'm going to hand over to Mags, who will describe some of our non-NCA work with your data.
Lovely, thank you, Becky. Yes, I'm Mags and I'm the Senior Specialist for Vascular Plants. I'm going to show you how the designation of SSSIs for vascular plants is utterly dependent on your records, not just the presence, absence, but also population details. The new guidelines for the selection of SSSIs for vascular plants was published this year, and I'm very pleased to say was deployed successfully for the first time at the yellow highlighted site on this map, which is Swanscombe Peninsula SSSI on the Thames estuary. Next slide, please, Becky. Swanscombe is a brownfield site, and apart from the enormous invertebrate interest, there are 12 scarce 12 scarce plant species recorded here, 5 of which qualified under the new guidance, including slender hare's ear, which in places was abundant, as here alongside the track. Next slide, please, Becky. Previously, plants as notified features on SSSIs was based on the presence of a Schedule 8 species or a combined score of rare and scarce species. The new selection guidelines are on the JNCC website, and vascular plants feature in Part 2 under Chapter 11. The new guidelines are more robust and more meaningful because they include information or require information on sustainability and significance of populations, as well as presence absence. They also now use the IUCN threat status as well as rarity, made possible by the publication of the Red List for GB and for England. They also now include criteria for taxonomically complex groups undergoing active evolution. So an SSSI designation should now aim to encompass sufficient habitat and populations of such taxa to allow the evolutionary process to continue. And an example is the sorbus group, also Euphrasia and Epipactis. Next slide, please. So using Swanscombe as an example, under section 411 of chapter 11 for vascular plants, GB or England rare or scarce and threatened status plants, so that's critical, endangered or vulnerable. For those species, all localities with a sustainable population should be considered for selection. And at Swanscombe, there were 4 qualifying plants listed there: slender hare's ear, yellow vetchling, Bithynian vetch, and divided sedge. So this is where information on population size, recruitment, trends, persistence over time also comes in to help us judge sustainability. Next slide, please. And also at Swanscombe, as an example, under section 442, in the case of either a GB or country level scarce taxon, where it's the largest or only sustainable population within an area of search, and an area of research equates to a national character area. And you can see those boundaries online. So again, information on the population enables a judgment of sustainability. And there was one species at Swanscombe that met this criteria. It's GB and England scarce and of least concern, so not a threatened category. There was round-leaved wintergreen. So I hope that gives you very quickly an idea of how your records are valuable. Could I have the next slide, please, Becky? Not just for presence absence, but also to enable a judgment of sustainability. So your records go directly really from data to enabling designation. So the records can be used for assessment of potential SSSIs and therefore direct conservation measures, so incredibly important. The data on population size and recruitment is also incredibly useful and important. And just to say, to follow up on Mark Gurney's comment, the BSBI big database is absolutely magnificent and our main source of data. So to all you recorders out there and botanical enthusiasts, thank you so much, and please keep it up. Thank you.
I do have a question, and perhaps this is one for you, Mags. So in terms of the new criteria for SSSI selection, do you expect to see an increase in the number of SSSIs, and have you modelled that at all based on the available data?
I certainly hope so, Kylie. In answer to your question about do we hope to see more, we will, on the back of the new guidelines, be reviewing the entire suite of SSSIs for vascular plant representation. And with thousands of sites and many rare plants of threatened status, I can assure you that's going to take a little while. But it's certainly a very exciting thing that we're just about to start doing.
Brilliant. That's great. Thank you very much.